talking about sexual harassment and unequal pay for women. In front of you, you have a couple of handouts that you can grab and take a look at. I'm going to first talk about sexual harassment in the workplace. Okay, I'm going to provide the definitions and learning objectives, the definition of sexual harassment, learn the different types of sexual harassment, and then also identifying the sexual harassment, and then the steps to how you can file a complaint. Okay. Definition. Definition is basically this: it's unwelcome and unwanted behavior that's portrayed visually, physically, touching. It can be severe, and it also affects the working conditions, which creates a hostile environment in the workplace. Flirtatious conduct versus inappropriate conduct. Okay, what this is talking about is this: when a person actually goes and flirt with an individual, if an individual likes that particular conduct, it's not considered as harassment. The only way that it can be harassment is when a person is actually offended. So this is what this particular script is talking about: flirtatious conduct versus inappropriate conduct. Statistically polls, which is by the Language Research Association, they're saying that in the United States there are 1 in 4 women that actually do a legal complaint from the workplace in the United States. And every 1 out of 10 men complain about sexual harassment. A quarter of the men are being actually falsely accused. So when women are actually going to complain, a fourth of those complaints are actually not holding up in court. They're not true. Then it says 64% of them foresee it being a problem in the United States. And actually 88% of the victims in the workplace are against the women versus men. The challenges that this research tells us is this. It says among those who've experienced harassment did not report it. And you wonder why people are not reporting it. A lot of them are not reporting it because they feel that it's not going to hold up, or they feel that no one is not going to believe what they're saying when they go and make the complaint. Does it cause division? Yes, it causes division. It says that 69% of the women call workplace sexual harassment a problem. Simply, again, because it causes a hostile environment. It compares with 59% of the men that widens the particular gap between check this out, this is political documentation here, it's data. Republican women, which are 63% of the plaintiff, and they considered it as a problem. And then the Republican men, 40% of them, or actually 43% of them, actually agreed to say that it is a problem. Is there a gender difference between the Democrats or the independents? It's really not too big of a difference. And they foresee that it's really not a problem. Ways of sexual harassment can be identified verbally. You can actually say something to a person and make a person feel uncomfortable. So it can be verbal, it can be written. Someone can actually write you a note that may have vulgar and make you feel uncomfortable, maybe talking about maybe a particular part of your body which makes you uncomfortable. Or maybe write a note to ask you out on a date and you really don't want to be bothered with the person. However, it's offensive to you because it's a continuation of flirtation. Another way of sexual harassment can be identified is physical. Someone literally coming up and touching you, make you feel uncomfortable. You can be sitting at a desk and you may have an individual come and touch your shoulder and lean over on you. They're in your private space. That can actually make you feel uncomfortable. So that can be actually considered sexual harassment if a person is offended. Ways of sexual harassment can be identified. Again, nonverbal, visual, non-sexual natures. Non-sexual contact may also be a sexual harassment if the harasser is a female rather than a male, or because you're a male rather than a female. There's also considered a same-sex sexual harassment, same-gender sexual harassment as well. Men versus men and women versus women in those complaints. Questions that may be asked when you do make a complaint from the human resource standpoint. That's the reason why it's very important for you to record and write down what's going on. How many times did it occur? How many times did the incident happen? How long was the harassment? How long did it go on? Were there any witnesses and things such as that? And the last screen I want to show before I talk about the next one is in regards to what a person needs to do when they file a complaint. It's important that you resist the harasser, the perpetrator. It's important that you record the incident. It's important that you report it. Who do you report it to? To your immediate supervisor. If it's your immediate supervisor, you go to the human resources. If human resources within the organization you feel is not supporting you, you can actually go out and go to the EEOC, the Equal Opportunity Commission's office to make that complaint. So next, I'm getting ready to talk about the unequal pay for women. Okay, sorry about that. My second presentation is on unequal pay for women. Do y'all believe there's still unequal pay for women, even today?
Yes.
Yes, it is. You guys, these numbers are going to astound me. Okay, check this out. When the Unequal or the Equal Pay Act was signed by President Kennedy in 1963, they said women were earning an average of 59 cents on the dollar compared to men. Do you all see that? Okay. While women hold nearly half of today's jobs, and their earnings account for the significant portion of the household, check this out. It says the income that sustains the financial well-being of their families, they are still experiencing a gap in the pay compared to men's wages for similar work. Today, women earn about 81 cents to the dollar compared to men. 81 cents. Now look at this. A gap that results in hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost wages for African American women and Latinos. The pay gap is even greater. Past history. Let's look at some history here. Early attitudes toward women, the traditional role in the household, that women a lot of times should be staying at home, should be housewives. That was the traditional role. So men were not really accepting when women began to go out there into the workforce and take up those jobs, because basically men are supposed to be the head of the house, supposed to be the provider. But when women actually started putting their foot in the career path and working, it was like men was looking as a competition. Okay, so the traditional role was that women are supposed to stay at home. But if they do go into the workplace, they're not supposed to be as equal as the men, because the men's supposed to be superior. Okay. Asians earn 32% less than white women. African American earn about 39% less than the white women, and then Hispanics earn about 37% less than white women. Now, what does the law say in regards to wages? It says, in addition to sexual discrimination prohibited by Title VII of the Civil Rights Act as amended, the Equal Pay Act of '63 as amended prohibits sex discrimination in payment of wages to women. There's a law, but it's still happening. Historical breakthroughs. Okay, World War I in 1917, the ratification of the 19th Amendment in 1920, equal pay in 1963, Title VII Civil Rights Act, and then 1966, a form of the noun, and I'm going to explain this. Then other laws came into place in regards to, this is dealing with the laws dealing with the workplace. Okay, in 1910, they created the 8-hour workday regulation. There was difficulties for people to even obtain credit during this particular time in the early 1960s. They talked about same job, half pay. In other words, Dwayne may go and get a job, say as a teacher, you may start out at, say for example, $25,000 a year. Women, I may go and I may start out at $15,000 a year. Okay, we're going to talk about the glass ceiling and then the wage gap. Okay, the time is to fight back, which is now through education and careers. Now more women are graduating from high school and college, which make a big difference in the pay wages. 40% of the women are law in accounting schools or in accounting schools. A lot of the women, they dominate advertising industries. This is where a lot of the women are actually working and fighting back and getting actually equal wages. Women now women head 220,000 of the households with an income with over $100,000 in the United States. These are United States statistics, okay? More statistics, 43% of the people with assets over $500,000 are women. Homeowners now are increasing. More single women are going out and buying homes. Now women make up 46.5% of the workforce. Okay, women are more in also management positions. This is the now. This is what is happening in breaking that glass ceiling. Current data, in 2010, women represented 46.7% in the United States of the labor force, okay? Overall, 71.9 million women were employed or looking for work, which is representing 58.6% of all women the age of 16 and over. Overall workforce has become more diverse and working women in the workforce, and it says, let me give you these statistics dealing with race. 13.1% are Black, 4.7% are Asian, and 12.8% are Hispanic population. This is more data, okay? Women are nearly 50% more likely to work in the public sector. Women are less likely to be self-employed. It says only 5.5% compared to 8.3% of men. Having women-owned businesses are now growing rapidly. And look at this, women surpasses men in the educational attainment. Among employed, at the age of 25 and over, 37.1% of women have at least a bachelor's degree, compared to the men, 34.9. And that's it.
All right, so hello. My HR challenges today are succession planning and talent pools. These are two topics that we've covered already, and essentially I'm going to give a little bit of overview and talk about some challenges and issues that I found. So briefly, succession planning enables organizations to identify talented employees and provide education to develop them for future higher levels and more broader responsibilities in management and things of that nature. Succession planning helps organizations build their strength in numbers, and it allows for individuals to come in entry-level positions to see that there is an advancement, opportunities for advancement as they go along. Succession planning also identifies future leaders within organizations. Most companies, smart companies, with succession plans will essentially invest in their employees, provide them with the professional development that they need, provide them with the cross-training that they need in order to advance when opportunities become available. So in essence, you have individuals within the organization serving as teacher leaders or leaders as teachers. From a savings standpoint, when we look at recruitment of new employees versus the retention of current employees, when you have a successful succession plan, it allows organizations to save money because they don't have to consistently put out to recruit, train new employees. They can work on, focus on the retention side. In essence, what it does is it keeps organizations from hiring new people only for them to leave, especially if there is no advancement opportunities in place. All right, so particular issues with succession plans, you look at competency gaps. Organizations have to essentially start at the baseline and assess where their current employees are and get them to where they need them to be over whatever allotted time that they have set for them. So one of the benefits is, identifying and in advance where some gaps may be within their workforce. Gaps may be based off of current needs or future needs. It may be based off of particular positions, particular skills, and things of that nature. So strategic consideration of the needs will ensure that companies don't break their stride and momentum as they move forward. So that's something for organizations to keep in mind in terms of recognizing where their gaps are and how to get their employees from point A to point B. Common mistakes. One of the pieces of literature that I found was from Bob Edwards of the Linkage Leader. He actually identified 8 mistakes that companies make when they're doing their succession plan. One, companies, they assume that succession management is just another HR program rather than a core senior management leadership training-based program. So ultimately, that's an HR duty, and they don't see it as something that's going to help the organization out. 2, they fail to be flexible when flexibility really makes a difference, and it makes a lot of business sense. 3, they do too much too fast. They get excited about the possibility of doing succession plans, and they move too fast. 4, they suffer from more internal, what the author calls myopia. Basically, they assume that nothing will happen to the top people. Nobody's going to leave, essentially, and that's a bad assumption to make. 5, succession planning in HR is like a vacuum. They fail to link succession plan to HR systems. And they try to do 6. They try to do succession planning with inconsistent and vague definitions. They don't take the appropriate time to actually plan everything out that they need to. 7, they neglect to develop plans as a part of the succession planning. They just try to throw something together. And then basically after a great start, they fail to sustain the succession planning. So building something that's sustainable is that 8th piece. And so therefore, those 8 mistakes are very vital when it comes to that. Great resource by this gentleman. My second topic was talent pools. We know that that should be in your PowerPoint as well. Talent pools essentially, are a way to reduce the risk that companies have too narrow or too specific type of positions within the company. In essence, companies need to do more cross-training and have more qualified individuals within the company that can do a variety of jobs instead of one specified job. With today's global economy, one of the things that's been pointed out is the fact that the globalization has created a lot of issues and challenges for talent pools. In essence, it has caused talent pools to dry up because the competition is so stiff. One a really good resource out there is the Evolving Global Talent Pool. The Levine Company is an institute out of the University of New York. They host a conference each year. This is what I found from 2005 to kind of highlight some of the issues, challenges, and strategic implications of talent pools. And in essence, they came up with 5 particular issues. 1, global education basically has outpaced American education. So whereas China, India, and other countries are improving their educational systems, we're actually falling behind. 2, a poor use of existing talent. Many companies domestically have an issue managing and developing their current talent pool, which when you think about competition, if you're not developing your talent pool, you're trying to go out there and you're competing for the top talent throughout the world, not just domestically. 3, innovation has changed organizational patterns. This one was pretty interesting because we see technology moving at a fast pace, but ultimately the innovation, because it's moving at a fast pace, companies aren't able to keep up. So your traditional talent pool or talent management systems are outdated, and they don't keep up with where innovation is going. 4, intensifying competition for talent globally and domestically. The talent's out there, but there's competition for those that have the qualifications. And then last, the critical challenge of managing groups demographically that are most commonly marginalized. So companies are having a hard time diversifying their talent pools because some of those groups that are typically marginalized, 1, they have opportunity, but at the same time they continue to be marginalized and get stuck in lower entry-level based positions. So they're not as easy to find, and when they are easy to find, people jump on them right away. So managing that demographic is always hard. So those are my 2 pieces.
Employee loyalty. Employee loyalty is high committed to the success of the organization and believing that working for this organization is their best. It means I love my job. But for many employees, it's not the case because actually the loyalty doesn't stay like this. Everybody loves their job because in our jobs we have a lot of challenges and problems. But the interesting point is the level of the loyalty. It is optimistic, but 100% loyalty is very rare in organizations. So you need at least 50 or 60% of loyalty in each employee to survive. And employee loyalty is not just retaining in the organization, the will in retaining in the organization, but also not searching, not actively searching. I mean, everybody can search for new jobs, but not actively searching for new jobs. Who is, why is loyalty important for us? Our number one priorities are mostly we think that our customers are number one, or stockholders are number one, or employees. Actually, they are all important, but in order to reach our customers with a high loyalty, we need to focus on our employees. We need loyal employees to the organization. And these loyal employees, what happens, it's like a domino effect, especially in large organizations. If the portion of disloyal employees are bigger, it will be a problem for customer satisfaction, and you cannot have loyal customers with disloyal employees. Why do we care about employee loyalty? First of all, the cost. We train employees, and then even, for example, working in an ordinary grocery store, they give training and they invest in you. So even a shoe salesman or a very high professional lawyer, you need to have loyalty. And replacement of, usually if you want to replace an employee, either he or she leaves or other issues, it is 35 to 50% of the salary you need to spend. And if it's a technical issue, it is more expensive than that. And for service customers, I mean, for example, organizations producing services, the employees are actually considered as the organization itself. For example, a couple of months ago, I had a problem with my internet, the AT&T internet company. They sent someone, but I think he was not so skilled, and then he was not so loyal to his organization. He didn't fix the problem, and then he went back. And I called again. I had another service employee, but I think he had a high level of loyalty because he was caring about my problem, and he was explaining what was the problem were originating from. So for me, the second employee was loyal to the organization.
Can I ask you a question? If they're loyal to the organization, do they also still need customer service in order for the organization to be successful? Like the way they talk to customers?
Can you give an example?
Okay, so this past week I went to the Long John Silver's out on Broadway, and I had asked for something, and I had asked if they could make it without the lettuce. And she said, I said, is it plain? She said, yes. So I'm at the drive-through window, I pick it up, and I'm sorry, it's fast food, but I pick it up and I said, I asked again, I said, is my sandwich plain? Yes, it is. Well, I'm driving and I open it up and it's not. So I had to go back in there and I said, no, this sandwich isn't plain. She said, but you didn't tell me. I said, well, I asked you if it was plain. She said, I thought you were talking about the ketchup.
Oh.
But she literally, as an employee of the food place, she was arguing with the customer.
Oh, yes.
And she looked like she was having a good time as a worker.
Uh-huh.
So she may have been loyal to the company.
Yes.
But her customer service skills were very rude.
Yes, actually, most organizations, they want their employees not to argue with the customers, even though the employees are 100% right on the issue. So I agree with you. If that employee should think that, for example, X company, and then but you see X company in that employee's behavior. So absolutely, it's very highly correlated with organizations.
So it's like she is Long John Silver's.
Yeah.
That's good.
Thank you for bringing that up. Factors affecting loyalty. Supervisors, you know, the relationship or fair or unfair performance appraisal. If it's unfair, you know, the level of the loyalty of employee may go down. And I want to have your attention in the job expectations. Some organizations, they have very high expectations from their employees, which the employees can never do that. My organization, for example, I sometimes, you know, the security issue, you need to sometimes cover everything, but you cannot cover in actual. But the organizations, okay, we will, for example, Louisville Metro Police Department's strategic plan, I think, or vision, we want to be the safest city in America. So, you know, this is even to reach that vision, you shouldn't have any population in Louisville. Because when there is people, there's always crime. So the security industry is sometimes having high expectations, and then employees get frustrated. Because so when you get frustrated, you lose your loyalty to your organization, because they are always expecting more than you can do. So this is one of the examples. Loyal attitudes. As an employee, if you are, for example, producing this paper, and then if I recommend this paper to my relatives, to my friends, this is a loyal behavior. So if I say that, okay, don't use it, this is very low quality, so this is the disloyal behavior.
That's why they put it on the surveys. They ask you if you would recommend the restaurant to one of your friends.
Yes. Yeah.
That's why they do that.
Chick-fil-A is really good at that.
I didn't think about that. That's why they do it.
So job satisfaction is directly correlated with loyalty. When you have high satisfaction, you can have high loyalty to the organization. And the last point, I want to have your attention, not actually searching for other jobs. Actively is important for me here, because imagine that your employees, when they are on lunch break, they go online and they look for new opportunities, new jobs. There's a problem. They don't feel that they're loyal to their organization. At home, I can understand, because at home you can do. But even in a very short time, you are trying to switch to another organization. So you should worry as a leader, as a manager. You should worry about that. This is a research about employee loyalty. It's done in England, London. 1 out of 3 employees, they claim that they can sell company confidential information if the price is right. So can you see the level of loyalty math here? It's very low. And information security is very important, because it keeps you competitive, and it's very important. And, in the same survey, 63% of the employees would leak sensitive data for £1 million, and the participants are 800 London train commuters. And ELRS is Employee Loyalty Research Center. It's an online, I pulled this information from their site. They categorize types of employees in 3 levels: loyal ones, neutral ones, and vulnerable ones. If the majority of your employees is either neutral or vulnerable, you need to worry about this. You need to correct something. This is a conceptual framework. Employee commitment and employee retention brings employee performance, and then they get specialized, and then you have more loyal customers. These are the factors affecting employee loyalty. I want to have your attention, supervisor relationship. We talked about this. Most people, they leave their organizations because of their supervisors or team leaders. And also the rewards and recognition. If you want to grow loyalty in our organization, we need to use sometimes rewards, not just punishment, not sticks. Again, the red numbers are level of loyalty in organizations. In terms of customer focused issues, upper management's level of loyalty is very low. In terms of communication issues, middle management people, they feel less loyal. I think it's the problem between providing the bridge between the lower level and higher level. And in terms of rewards and recognition, the hourly workers, they don't care about rewards and recognition. Maybe the amount is not so big, but imagine that you're working in a grocery store and then you are receiving some sort of bonus, but it doesn't mean that you will stay in that job and stay to the organization loyal. So here are why organizations leave. There are some lack of trust, lack of communication, lack of relevant and timely feedback, appreciation. The key point is if your organization is more than 200 employees, these lackos, they become issues in your organization. For my organization, we are more than 200,000, so we had a lot of issues. So the more bigger or more bigger, more problems. Employee pride. Employee pride, usually employer says that do what I am telling you, except that don't do anything. This doesn't give employees some sort of discretion. And then, you know, the employees, if you remember Maslow's hierarchy, the fifth one is self-actualization. And if you don't delegate some decision-making power to your subordinates, if you keep centralized all the powers, and it makes the organization very slow, and then the employee pride is very low in your organization. How can we improve them? We can manage by objectives, we can suggest ideas, we should delegate some of our decisions. Second topic I want to cover is discipline. Discipline, first of all, is a method of training. As leaders, we need to use it as a training method rather than just punishing people. There are two approaches in this employee discipline. One is the positive approach. First, if you find something wrong in your employee's behavior, first you start to counsel. And then if this doesn't work, you write a written documentation. Usually most of the employees are good until this step, and then they change their attitudes. But some of them, it's a character issue. The character, you know better than me as educators, the education is very helpless in terms of educating the characters. Every employee has some sort of characters, but some of them they need final warning, and some of them you need to get rid of. So these are the steps. In my career, in my policing profession, I did most of these two, and most of it worked, but I avoided these two for organizational culture. I'm going to talk about this. The next slide. This picture or this chart, left side is HR unit. As HR leaders, we need to design the policy and procedures, and we shouldn't act like practitioners. The practitioners are the managers of the units or the division. For example, designs progressive discipline and process of non-union. make disciplinary decisions. The second approach is progressive approach. This is more aggressive approach. It starts rather than counseling. You just say that, okay, you are doing something wrong. Is time up?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll be back.
Okay. And written suspension and discharge. Why the organizations don't want to use, or why they are reluctant to use employee discipline? First of all, organizational culture. Most organizations, they don't want to be bad leader, but you need to use it. Sometimes culture of top management, they don't want to fire people, they just want to, okay, accommodate the situation. And friendship sometimes may be the issue, or as a leader you can see it's a waste of time, because in disciplinary actions it's not clear that employee gets the same or gets the disciplinary action as we wanted. Sometimes the employee or disciplinary action is non-effective, so we can see, oh, it's a time loss, get over it. Sometimes fear of lawsuits, the retaliation by the employee sometimes threaten us. Sometimes there is an insufficient evidence, we don't start disciplinary action. This is my last slide. Hot stove rule. As a leaders, the book says we need to use hot stove rule. It provides a feeling hot, and it burns every time, not just Matt or not just Tanya. It burns every time. It's immediate. It burns now, and it's impersonal. It's not subjective. It's objective. So these are the 2 points I covered: employee discipline and loyalty. Do you have any questions?
My two issues are merit pay and employee rights and employer responsibilities. Merit pay is a historical concept that means incentive theory. Incentive theory is I should be compensated for my performance. Financial motivation could be a direct link to increased performance. However, the argument is if you pay your employees what they are worth, there will not be a need to dangle a carrot for motivation. So if you pay people based on their qualifications, you don't have to worry about them wanting more and them only doing more to get more. I'm skipping this and I'm going to send it to you in email because it's too long.
Okay.
The pros and cons of merit pay. One of the pros is it leads to better performance outcomes. So if you are someone who's in sales and by the end of the month you have to sell a certain number of units of something, you're going to work harder to get those accomplished because you're going to have something added in addition to your salary. Increases morale in the workplace. If it's healthy competition, then it's more teamwork, versus I'm going to chop your head off because I'm going to get more money than you do. And then it gives purpose to individuals and buy-in to the mission and vision of the organization. So if you set these guidelines ahead of time, by the end of the month I want to see this done or this event planned or these activities accomplished, and this is what you get, and it's an equal amount among the whole team, it allows them to perform at a higher rate. The cons: increased competition among coworkers. Like I said, it'll be an unhealthy morale in the workplace. Wasted time and money in the administration of merit pay plans. You have to hire someone who does evaluations, someone who determines how much people get for what they do. And then the pay is subjective. We all have our own little sense of nosiness, and sometimes people don't keep their bonus to themselves. They tell other people, and then that turns into, well, why did Becky get more than I did when I did the same amount of work that Becky completed? Next, employee rights and employer responsibilities. Here are 5 of the main ones, and then there's some other ones that I'm going to share with you. One is leave of absence. An employee has the right to take a leave of absence under the Family Medical Leave Act. Your employer is not allowed to tell you no if it's an emergency, if you're sick, if your child is sick, someone dies. They're not supposed to tell you no. Like, that's something that you can take up with human resources. The employee is entitled to 12 unpaid weeks off in a 12-month period due to pregnancy, adoption of children, or medical emergencies of the employee or family members of the employee. The employee has the responsibility of notifying the employer of the leave. If not, the employee is responsible for notifying human resources. So say it's an absolute emergency. That goes a step above your direct supervisor. Drug-free workplace. Every employer is allowed to have a drug-free workplace. Example, Rhonda, I need a urine sample today. You cannot say no because I want my workplace to be drug-free. This allows, if there's a person that they're suspicious of, there's a person that you know might be using drugs, well, I'm going to test everyone. Now, the bad thing is the person you're suspicious of is not the one that gets caught. Someone else does. But your employer has the right to request a drug test. Equal employment opportunity. Employees have the right to be considered for a job based on their qualification and skills. The personal beliefs and characteristics of an employee should not play a role in the hiring and firing process. We've heard it over and over. It's just not right to say, you know what? I don't like when you wear your hair curly. And I'm saying this because someone has said this to me. So for that, I'm not going to give you, I'm not going to give you a new title or a new position. Who forgot? Fair Standard Labor Act, child labor laws, pregnancy laws, laws against race, ethnicity, everything that has to do with labor. Labor is labor, and that's it. Who you are is who you are, period. What you do, job performance-wise, has nothing to do with that. Safety codes. Your employer has to provide a safe environment. If there are wires hanging from the ceiling and sparks coming from the wall, you are not required to go to work. It needs to be reported. Will you still be paid? Yes. After the when OSHA comes in and they investigate this, yeah. Here are some other employee rights that I found that are quite interesting. It's on the, flip it again. There, yeah. One more time.
Okay, go ahead.
Title VII, Race, Color, Religion, Sex, and National Origin. Pregnancy Discrimination Act, the Age Discrimination Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, GINA that we heard about last week, Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, User, Uniform Services Employee and Re-Employee Rights Act. This means that I was in a uniform service and I am allowed to be re-employed. FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, FLSA, Fair Labor Standards Act, ERISA, I don't know how this is really pronounced because there was not a phonetic sound on there. Employee Retirement Income Security Act, COBRA, Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act, OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Act, NLRA, National Labor Relations Act. This means that I am allowed to go to my employer or my union if I feel like there is misconduct.
Right.
And it is my right to go to the union. I don't necessarily have to go into my supervisor's office and say, this is what I'm going to do. I want you to know about it first. You can do it as a courtesy, but you don't have to. Fair Credit Reporting Act, and then WARN, Worker Adjustment Retraining Act. This means I cannot just close. You cannot go to work and the doors are locked and there's chains and the lights are off and it says, we're out. That is illegal. Okay, this is a video that I want to share with you because it is extremely interesting and it's something that to me might be subjective, but is also probably to some of us seem like common sense.
And now to the story of a dental assistant in Iowa.
I'm gonna have to stand up because I can't see.
What is that? Oh.
Now to the story of a dental assistant in Iowa whose boss fired her because he said she was too attractive. That's right, there were no accusations of cheating or flirting. Her only crime was looking too good. And the state's highest court has now sided with the boss. Here's ABC's Tanya Rivero.
Melissa Nelson spent 10 happy years working as a dental assistant until she was fired because her boss said she was too tempting and a threat to his marriage. On Friday, the all-male Iowa Supreme Court unanimously agreed dentist James Knight was justified when he fired an employee he saw as an irresistible attraction.
I'm devastated. I really am. There's not an appeal. The state is as far as we can go.
The decision is sparking much controversy. Some employment attorneys are calling it a dangerous throwback.
I wouldn't have been surprised if it was a decision that was written in 1970, maybe by the characters of Mad Men.
The 32-year-old married mother of two says she saw her employer as a father figure and was shocked when Dr. Knight admitted even though she was great at her job, he couldn't be trusted around her.
You know, after working so many years side by side, I didn't have any idea that would have crossed his mind.
According to court documents, Dr. Knight referenced Nelson's infrequent sex life, saying that's like having a Lamborghini in the garage and never driving it. And when the doctor's wife discovered him sending text messages to his assistant, it was his wife who demanded she be fired. Nelson sued for gender discrimination.
I think the women in Iowa should probably start going to work in burqas for fear that their boss might find them sexually attractive and terminate them.
Dr. Knight's lawyer gave ABC News this statement. Nelson was not terminated because of her gender, but to preserve the best interests of his marriage.
I think it's sending a message that men can do whatever they want in the workforce.
Nelson's lawyer tells me they've both received a huge outpouring of support, with some even offering to pay legal costs. But after 3 long years of fighting, there could be no more appeals.
Wow.
Exactly.
And you know what? His wife made that happen.
Absolutely.
And he probably had some other infractions.
But do you think it's right?
No, it's absolutely wrong. He was dead
There
wrong.
are 2 things that were wrong. One, that he said it out loud and it happened. 2, it was an all-male decision.
Right. That's a problem.
That's a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
And she can do nothing else about it.
So yeah.
I
Exactly.
saw that on the news and
That's
I
horrible.
was like, wait a minute. I'm like, rewind it because I didn't believe it.
Okay, true or false? An employer can only fire me for a good reason.
False.
False.
True.
True.
Okay. In most cases, your employer can fire you for any reason except
hired at will.
specific illegal reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're an at-will state. So if they didn't like your curly hair, you're gone.
Then I won't have a job.
Yeah. And you can't sue them.
Yeah. Okay. I can sue my employer because my boss is mean to me and harasses me for no reason.
True.
Well, he's got to be.
Yes. Harassment.
Yeah,
True.
if he harasses you, but here's the thing.
You can sue anybody if you're going to get
But
judged for.
Right.
It depends on
I
how
don't know
he's
about
doing
your
it.
award.
I think. Because if he's writing me up consistently, can't sue him because that's his right.
He has documentation.
Yes, because he has documentation. If he's harassing
I
you
don't know.
sexually, that's a different situation, I think.
Just harassing is not about sexual harassment.
Well, but
Every kind of harassment.
but I'm speaking from experience. I had a boss.
okay.
I had a boss that was writing me up like almost every day, at least twice a week. In Jefferson County, they call it an E2 form. They said yeah. They said you might feel like you're being harassed, but you really have no grounds to sue him because he has the right to do that.
And you also have no grounds because it is not against the law to be a jerk.
Okay,
This
so
is
there
true.
you go.
So that's false, right?
While the law prohibits harassment in the workplace, not all harassment is worthy of being deemed harassment. So if you truly feel harassed and it's something that happens consistently, there has to be documentation and there has to be proof. You can't just say, I was harassed, he assaulted me. Right. I'm sympathetic. Yeah, you keep like that. Right. I want to quit my job today, but the law requires me to give my employer 2 weeks notice.
What are you asking? Is it true or false?
True.
I think it depends. If you are in my job, yeah, I'd have to give them 2 weeks notice. But because Dean is a musician, he can quit today.
Well, I will add one thing. Entertainment
It's totally
is
different.
one of the career fields or job sectors that don't have to comply with the same government mandates that others do.
But you're talking about a non-entertainment job.
Yes.
Okay. I have no idea.
Okay. You can quit your job whenever you want to. Is it professional courtesy? Absolutely not. If you want a recommendation from them, you might not want to. But you can quit whenever you want to. It's your right to just quit. I've been a good employee for several years, but was just laid off. I am entitled to a severance package.
No. If they give you notice that they're laying you off, no, you're not entitled to anything.
Yeah, no.
It's the warning.
You're not entitled. You're not entitled to be paid a severance package. I'm pregnant and am entitled to a paid maternity leave.
You are entitled to a leave and to get your job back. It doesn't have to be paid.
Absolutely. You are entitled to maternity leave, yes, but it is likely an unpaid leave. So when you're using your own time and you're,
Yeah, because you have to use your vacation time or whatever you have to accumulate it.
employer responsibilities.
Go ahead.
The top 5 employer responsibilities are create a safe work environment, create sustainable business, provide employees with the ability to evolve as professionals, and this means employees get bored with lack of opportunity. This can turn into lack of employee loyalty and turnover as well as unsuccessful performance. Maintain ethical business practices. Ethical business practices are important to the company's sustainability because if it's unethical, you won't have positive relationships with your employees. And if your employees are not happy, there's no sustainability. Recognize employee contributions. The foundation of an organization is the contribution of its employees. Yes, there is someone who had a mission and a vision and had a plan and has goals, but your team and the people that work for you are the ones that carry that out and create the contributions to your foundation. If you need to make a report, the first step will be to go to your manager or supervisor. Depending on the nature of your organization, there may be a union representative, an ombudsman, or a designated person to handle mediation and claims. And then the orange sheet that you have, employee versus employer bill of rights. This was extremely interesting to me because it's almost like they go hand in hand. Employer bill of rights, the right to hire on qualifications and fire on performance. The right to criticize, that could be your E2 that you were talking about. The right to control operations, the right for you to follow our work rules. If your organization has certain rules that maybe aren't necessarily the same rules as other departments or other schools, that's okay. as long as they're ethical and it's nothing that is illegal. The right to be told when there is a problem, the right to receive an honest day's work, the right to have a say before you form a union, the right to reasonable notice, the right to be treated with respect, and the right to confidentiality. Employee Bill of Rights, the right to be hired based on qualifications, the right to be paid the market wage, the right to know what's expected, the right to succeed together, the right to have a life, which I found very interesting, the right to speak up, the right to be treated with respect, the right to keep learning, and the right to relevant information. That is that.
Good job, Erica.
To our workplace forum. Okay, this is our first newsletter together. So if you take a look at it, it'll tell you that this is just in, and it is fall 2013. This is our first issue. I'm so proud of everybody because we did it together. This is a special edition newsletter with a human resource focus for my talented colleagues and esteemed Professor Greer, who is going to be watching us. My topics were workplace relationships and promotions. So if you take a look at the first part, it says, what kind of activities are occurring during a typical workday? What do we do when we go to work? What kinds of activities do we go through?
We communicate, interact with fellow employees.
Exactly. We're talking, we're communicating, we're meeting. Okay. What about activities that occur with interpersonal relationships? Counseling.
We're doing that.
What else? Conferencing. So these counseling and conferencing and meeting and communicating can easily cross over to sexual harassment, depending on what your intentions are. So I can listen to you and I can watch you, but I can stare at you and I can leer you up and down. Sorry, Matt. I can make offensive remarks, or I can talk. I can look at your clothes, or I could talk about your clothes. It's the way that things are said that become offensive and that turn into a different kind of relationship at the workplace. So touching in a way that may make an employee feel uncomfortable, such as patting, pinching, intentional brushing against another person's body, telling sexual or lewd jokes, making gestures, sending suggestive letters, notes, emails, and then the latest sexting. Okay? So if you take a look at our second part and second page of the newsletter, there is actually a workplace options survey, and I want to share the results with you. Approximately 85% stated that they would have a workplace romantic relationship. Numbers are high. It's also between the ages of 18 and 29.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so between the ages of 30 and 46, only 35% said that they would, and between 47 and 66, 30% of the results showed that they would actually have a romantic relationship. I don't know about you, but I'd like to keep my work separate. I would not have one.
Absolutely.
That's just me. A career builder survey results indicated that 38% did date a coworker, and this is all ages, and 33% have experienced bullying. Okay. Promoting from the internal environment or the external environment. I also had the topic of promoting from inside an organization or outside. If you promote from inside the organization, the person is already familiar with the organization, the person already has that training, okay, and is familiar with the culture. The employer has firsthand experience of the worker because they know what the worker is like, they know what the attendance is like, they know what the reviews have been like. Promoting externally from the environment based on the organization, sometimes getting somebody to come in from the outside may be cheaper. Sometimes getting somebody to come in from the outside, you may end up with somebody with more expertise or a new fresh start that culture really needs and that organization needs. And then the last part of this month's newsletter talks about non-sexual harassment actions. And by the way, the word harassment in itself, the pronunciation was changed a few years ago to harassment, because harassment, the word and the pronunciation, was harassment in itself. Did you get it? Okay. Use of racially derogatory words, phrases, racial or ethnic gestures, pictures, comments about a skin color, comment about characteristics that are racial and ethnic, making disparaging remarks, negative beliefs, lack of religious beliefs, negative stereotypes, any kind of intimidating references between the employee and the employer also is a part of non-sexual harassment actions that may occur. There are a couple of books that are excellent resources. If you take a look at the bottom, there's one that's called Leading So People Will Follow by Erica Anderson, and then Chasing Stars, The Myth of Talent and the Portability of Performance. And you'll see that both of these books are fairly current, 2010 and 2011. And then there's a journal reference. The journal reference actually even has some statistics and some data there for you. So this just in, our first newsletter. Thank you. Any questions?
I'm doing aging in the workplace. That's my first HR issue. And my second one is lesbian and gay rights. I'm going to talk a little bit about the aging one first. And what I'd like to ask you all is, do you know the names of the generations that are all working in the workforce right now?
Traditional baby boomers, X generation, Y generation, millennials, or X-web millennials.
Is there the silent generation? Are they still around?
Yes, the silent generation is the GI generation, and the mature traditional silent generation. They can all be lumped together. That's the generation that was born before 1946. The baby targets that thank you. Did you give him one?
Par already answered the question.
He answered the question. It was, could you name the since you missed it, could you name the generations that are all working in the workplace? For the first time in history, there are 4 generations in the workplace: the baby boomers, the generation X,
traditional,
the generation Y, which are the millennials also, and the traditionals, because the traditionals are still needing to work, a few of them.
The traditionals are the oldest. Okay.
Yes, but the issues that we have going on right now are the issues that we have going on right now is retirement of the baby boomers. For the first time since history, we will have people, over 60% of our workforce are 50 and older. And that is a major shift change for our society, for corporations, for our schools, and everything. So if you can see, I'm not going to read all of this to you because I just don't believe in that, but I'd like for you to know, you can see the statistics, and I have the statistics on our handout. Okay, the problem that is arising is that corporations have not successfully strategically planned for this shift. It is causing a major uproar for all businesses, for all communities, and all industry, because if you might imagine, the older people cost more when they get older for the healthcare industry. People are working longer. Why do you think people are working longer?
Because they need money.
They lost all their money in the retirement
insurance
when the stock market crashed.
That's one issue. Not the main one, though.
People are living longer.
People are living longer. Why are people living longer? And you know this, Becky.
Because technology will keep anybody alive.
Because technology and medical advances
Even if
are
they're
keeping
only
up.
breathing in the bed.
Even if they're only breathing in the bed. They might not be living, and that's one of the issues that we're dealing with today, quality of life. But the aging workforce has changed the whole dynamics of how we do business, how we educate our children, and what we're going to do to fix that problem. Because now that we are working longer, money is not available for Social Security and all of this. We lost our money in the big recession. People are working longer, but people are working longer because the society that we set, our standards we're stopping at age 50. People are staying in the workforce. Oh, I'm sorry. People are staying in the workforce longer than they ever have. Used to, people would retire and you'd only be in the work, getting retirement for 5 years. People are getting retirement now for 30 plus years. Our systems were not developed for that. Ways that you can handle retirement if people are not getting on board or you need them to is this. You can offer retirement, you can offer buyouts, you can offer layoffs. And if you offer layoffs, you give them options to come back and work a flexible schedule. Most people want to do that. The baby boomers, that's the major age right now that's getting ready to retire. That's the one that we're dealing with the most.
The 50s, the over 50s.
Yes. I'm going to give one. The younger the applicant, the cheaper they are willing to work. Do you think that's true?
Absolutely. They don't have the experience.
False.
Very false.
It's false?
Yeah, they want more money.
They want more money.
Really?
This is the entitlement age. And let me tell you, the entitlement generation is not just Generation Y. It's our generation too. We started it, and that's why Generation Y
is the way they are.
Is the way, yes.
I guess when you think about it, yeah, because they're like that in schools too. Like, they just feel like they're supposed to get
Let's look at this Gen Y versus the baby boomers. This is the one thing that I really brought something to me. I learned a lot. Gen Y versus the baby boomers, what they think and what they believe and what we believe. I want to help. Wait. This. I want to be part of something bigger, but I want to make a lot of money doing it. The baby boomers generation was wanting to serve. Now, I'm going to finish that one and move on to, because I'm supposed to do both, right?
Sure.
Gay and lesbian, how many minutes do I have?
You have plenty of time.
Okay.
You still have 10 minutes.
Okay, well, then I should do 10 minutes for this one. Gay and lesbian rights in the workplace. Now, this one I almost really didn't want to do, as you all can remember. And while I do this, I'm going to get this ready for the next one. I didn't really want to do this one because it's a little bit uncomfortable for me. But I am glad that I did it because I've learned a lot about it. Now, politically or whatever, I don't have issues with lesbian, gays, whatever. It's just a controversial topic. I think gay marriage should be legalized. I think, we should let people do whatever they want to do in their own lives. They've got to answer to their own higher power. They don't have to answer to me. That's how I believe personally. So with that, I've learned a lot that there's really no law to help if you are gay, lesbian, transgender, or bi. There's just no law to protect you. They're often fired, demoted, not promoted, missed promotions. They're often, all these things happen to them.
The NELC is trying to absorb them, but it's too much.
Yes.
It's too much.
Well, there's there's a new law. I got to get back to my, there's this new law, ENDA, and it is the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. And it's been passed by the Senate House Committee, but it has not made it to the floor yet. Because as you might imagine, the Republicans are big filibusters for that. And even though they've got some on their, some Republicans on their side, they don't have enough to get it to the floor. But it is making progress, and people are really excited as to what they think is going to happen. Now, I'm sorry, I'm bringing up my next one, and this was really Now, I'm going to read this because I don't want to miss a part. It says, qualified, hardworking Americans are denied job opportunities, fired, or otherwise discriminated against just because they are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. There is no federal law that protects them from that. Now, what can change that is increased acceptance in our society. What has changed it is increased acceptance. How do you get increased acceptance? This is a trick question, and we're giving another prize.
How do you get increased?
Acceptance. How is increased acceptance of an issue brought together? How do we change our minds about things?
Education.
Education. Yes. The more we learn about it, the more we are introduced to people who are practicing those lifestyles, the more we're able to accept them. Because just like in the 60s when the civil rights movement, the 50s and the 60s with the civil rights movement, you started being beside people that were like you, just different in color, and you found out they really are not much different. And who people love, it's an emotion. It's not something we need to judge. So the acceptance is getting bigger, but it's definitely not where it needs to be. Now, what I want to share with you specifically is approaches to workplace discrimination. The one thing that's going to be significant in changing workplace discrimination is the changes to corporate policies. Only 26 other states with Ohio, Virginia, and Florida, even you can be fired still in those states. 34 states only have some laws. Kentucky is one of those that has some laws about it, but not all. They should be in the state where, and we should be in a place where you cannot be discriminated against if you are gay, lesbian, transgender, or bi. You should not be discriminated for that. We have a law that you can get a federal, you cannot be fired from a federal job or government job because of that. But the other places that can happen. Now, the ENDA is in place for every business with 15 members or more, 15 employees. If you have smaller than 15 employees, then that company, small businesses that company doesn't have to do anything. If it is not in accordance with the military, it does not affect the don't ask, don't tell, but because President Obama repealed and changed that back a couple of years ago, that's still pretty safe now. So it doesn't need it. And most situations with churches, you don't have to have that law in place. So there are exemptions with that law. What is leading the change for gays and homosexuality being more accepted is what generation?
Oh, it's going to be the ones that want to make the money. The
Younger generation.
The younger generation, the attitudes of the young people, they are more tolerant. And so they are the ones that's leading the change. They're the ones that's directing the thought, and they are the ones that are insisting in our generation X, in the baby boomers generation, and in the generation before that, that you have dialogue. And having dialogue requires acceptance, because once you start talking to people, you start hearing it. So, are there any questions?
Thanks.
You rock, Lynn, yay!
I'm going to give you your sheets. I want you to look specifically at the homosexuality should be rejected or accepted. Look at the countries.
Wow.
I think that's
we need to
significant.
catch up. We need to pay
I think
attention
that's
to some
significant.
stuff.
Don't you think that's significant?
It is.
I think that's significant. One thing I learned in this was specifically, oh, sorry. And this is the age. I just want one pagey thingies so you can quick thingies. Specifically when it comes to where we are in the acceptance of people, I think we need to really question ourselves on that. I really do. If you want to love who you love, I don't want you to question who I love.
Right.
So, do your thing. Just don't force me to love them. Right. And I think that's really where we're trying to get to. And I do think we're going to get there. Are there any questions?
Excellent. Thank you.
Very good.
We're going to talk today about human resources issues and challenges. We're going to look at 2 issues and challenges this evening. The first is interviewing protocols and techniques for the 21st century organizations, and the second one is mental health and mental illness. We're going to go through our presentation. We're going to talk about the categories listed, and I have 2 visuals. First of all, I have the board here to kind of give you an overview of what this looks like as far as the different processes, and then I've created a Prezi presentation for us to go through. So first of all, we're going to talk about selection interviews, and basically there's 2 types of selection interviews. There's reliability and validity. We learned those 2 terms in Dr. Lim's class, in our statistics class, and basically reliability talks about the tool that is used to measure something consistently. So in interviewing, you have to use the same questions. So that's the reliability. Validity is the relationship of the questions and the tools that would be used to measure it. So here's an example. Keyboarding skills for data entry. So when you look at validity, you're talking about the relationship of the questions that you're asking. Then within reliability, there's 2 different types. Intra-rater and inter-rater. Intra-rater is the interviewers use a consistent form of questions to select their applicants. Inter-rater ability is when different interviewers agree on the same questions to be asked. Then there is face validity. These are tests that appear to be valid because the applicant assumes that they are valid. The next one is the reliability and validity. We talked about that. Structured interviews. Structured interviews are basically standardized questions. Many organizations use standardized questions, and Becky and Lynn, they did a wonderful job presenting on interviewing protocols when they talked about structured interviews on September the 17th. A lot of this information is an overlap, which is a good thing because it's good to help us to go back and revisit and review materials that we've already learned. The next one is less structured interviews, and basically these are questions that are developed for a particular job that have nothing to do with the job itself. Those are less structured interviewing questions. Who conducts interviews? Basically, we have individuals who conduct interviews. We have a sequential process, and basically this is where the interview questions are multi-layered or multitasked. There's a panel interview, then you have a team interview, video interviews, and just like we did our presentation with Dr. Keepers, Present Me, you can interview via technology or Skype. Effective interviews. Effective interviews take 3 components. Well, there's planning for the interview, which is very effective, and then you have a process that's called controlling the interview, making sure that there's tools in place to make sure that the interview is effective. The next is using effective questioning techniques. There are also problems with the interviewing process. Well, one problem is snap judgment. This is when people are hired too quickly based on their experience. Then you have negative emphasis. Negative emphasis is the rejection of a candidate based on a small amount of information. An example, I'm going to hire you because you don't have enough education. Then you have the halo effect, and this is when an interviewer allows one strong point about the candidate to overshadow or have an effect on something else. Here's an example. I'm going to hire you because you work at the university. I'm going to hire you because of your experience, because I know who you are.
Right.
So basically that's the halo effect. Then you have the bias and stereotyping effect. You form your opinions of someone based on their ethnicity, based on their gender, based on their religion, or based on their appearance or other characteristics. Then you have noise, cultural noise, and these are, since the candidate wants the job, he or she provides the right thing to say. So if I'm going to interview you, Stephanie, I'm going to tell you everything you want to hear so that you can, it's almost like bribing. Okay, so the next issue and challenge is mental health and mental illness. This is a very, how can I put this? Real topic, authentic, relevant topic that is common in many workplaces. A prime example, at my school, we have close to 25 to 30% of our students who are special education, who have some form of IEP or some form of disability, and mental illness is relevant in our school. So one thing that employers try to do is they try to prevent and have wellness types of efforts. In doing that, they try to help employees to cut the costs of insurance. They try to provide programs to offset different types of mental illness and concerns. They have newsletters and classes and programs to help promote healthcare and help people to understand the effectiveness of healthcare benefits. Just in Jefferson County Public Schools, it's open enrollment for insurance, and there's this huge health insurance fair going on. It is mandatory that you have to participate in healthcare coverage. So they're trying to really help us to understand the process. They help us to understand cutting the costs and reducing the efforts. So then we have healthcare legislation, which is very important because there's federal laws and state laws that help us understand healthcare benefits. The new passage of the National Healthcare Plan to ensure all individuals, and we know, what is that called?
The Affordable Care Act.
Affordable Care Act.
Or
Obamacare.
Obamacare, absolutely. That's an example of a healthcare legislation. The family-oriented benefits. Families are different in the United States. There's a significant change. There's no more traditional families anymore. Now you have single families, single working families. You have mothers. Back in the day when mothers stayed at home and fathers went out and did all the work. Now couples are working. There's a dual relationship with families working outside of the home. So the family the family capacity is changing. Then you have families that, one family-oriented benefit is called Family Medical Leave Act. We've heard of that before, FMLA. It was established in 1993, and basically it's for employers with 50 or more employees within a 75-mile workplace, and they have to be there 12 months or 1,250 hours to be eligible for the benefits. Family care benefits. This is a growing area too within the organization. Many organizations have adoption benefits. Didn't know that. I researched that within Jefferson County Public Schools, and we don't have that benefit, but some employers have established adoption benefits, and it says 37 to approximately 47% of firms provide some type of adoption benefit. I thought that was very interesting. Measuring the effectiveness of family benefits. The greatest advantage that employees try to do or try to maintain is retaining their employees. How do they do that? Providing good health care benefits. Making sure that their health care benefits are flexible and that they have a choice as to what benefits they can select for their families. And they want to keep the prices down low. Now, I was able to find a video that talked about strategic management, and I want to share that with you. And basically, it was just an advertisement for strategic planning. Okay, let me find it. Hold on. There it is. Okay, well, okay, maybe we won't be playing it.
Just move. See if you can just move your mouse on.
Yeah, just click
Move your mouse on.
Here we go. You're gonna edit this, right?
Yeah, I'll edit all this out.
There we go. It's not playing though. There we go. Okay, so to bring closure to our presentation, basically strategic management and human resource issues and challenges have a huge effect on employee morale, on interviewing protocols, on health related issues within our organization. And we need to understand too that when we manage people, we care about people, and we work together as a collaborative team, that we can work together for the good. Any questions?
Good job.
Good job.
I had the HR challenges, flexible scheduling, reorganization, and employee morale. And I'm just going to talk about a few points with regards to flexible scheduling to begin with. And so I'm going to talk about the advantages and the disadvantages. All right, first of all, flex time is one type of scheduling. Employees work a set number of hours, but the starting and ending point in their day vary. So instead of working like 9 to 5 or instead of working a 9 to 5 job, you might work 7 to 4. You might work, 11 to 7. And so employees also can work at home. So they could be self-employed or full-time or part-time employees at a firm. So all of this is kind of flexible scheduling. There are some advantages for employees with regards to flexible scheduling, and they are, just very quickly, flexibility to meet family needs. So it might be helpful to a family who might have some personal obligations or life responsibilities to be able to be able to be on a flexible schedule. Also, being on a flexible schedule reduces consumption of time and fuel costs. If you're working from home, then you don't have to worry about sitting in traffic. You're not wasting gas. You know how it is when we, for me, every Sunday, go to the gas station, and I know you, Stephanie, because you got that high-end car. Every Sunday, you got to fill that gas tank up there so you can get back and forth to work. So this is an advantage for an employee. Also, being able to work from home reduces burnout and overload for the employee, because you can kind of work, even though you're getting the same number of hours in. For me, I'm not really a morning person, even though you probably wouldn't know that since I work in a school. But I have to be at work at 6:45, but I feel like my day doesn't really, I'm not really firing on all 6 cylinders until like 10 o'clock. So if I could stay at home and work, that would be kind of cool. Also, it may decrease childcare costs, especially if you have young children. So instead of having to go and get daycare, you might be able to maybe take care of your child during the day or in the morning and put them down for a nap and be able to get some work done. So this is excellent for single parents or low-income families. All right, there are also some advantages for employers, and I'll quickly go through those. For employers, increased employee morale, engagement, and commitment. Reduced absenteeism and turnover as well. So employees miss fewer days when they do not have to choose between family issues and work, personal or family issues and work. So that's good for the employer. Increased productivity and quality of work. Employees who schedule their days around other obligations can focus better on work and give their full and mental and emotional attention to what it is they're doing at their job. And also another advantage for employees is extended hours of operation. If you have a group of employees coming in, like at my job, from 7 to 3:30, and then even at my job, there are some people that don't come in at 7. Some of them come in at 7:30. But what happens is that my office then is open, not just from 7 to 3:30, but we end up being open from 7 to 4 because there are going to be some people that come in later. So extended hours of operation. There are also some disadvantages for employers. One of the disadvantages is inequality. When employees offer flexible scheduling on a case-by-case basis, and then they arbitrarily grant or deny that flexible scheduling to their employees, it can create conflict and low morale in the workplace. So, Stephanie comes to me and says, I have a child or I have a sick parent and I need to come in at 9 o'clock. And then Tanya comes in and says, well, I've got a 3-year-old or 4-year-old and I need to come in at 8:30. And I'm like, no, sorry, Tanya, you need to be here. Your work day starts at 7 o'clock. So what is that going to cause for you guys as employees? It's going to cause some conflicts. Sure. Also, another disadvantage for employers is that there's less teamwork. And the reason is because with people coming in at different times of the day, it's difficult to come up with a set time that everybody's there at the same time and everybody is able to sit down and meet. So let's talk about reorganization and employee morale. First, I'm going to deal with the effects of reorganization, merger and acquisition. Sometimes reorganization of a workplace might be necessary, and it might be necessary because the organization might need to reorganize just to stay competitive and to keep up with the market. So, sometimes it's just a necessary thing, just to stay on the cutting edge. Merger and acquisition is another reason why, reorganization might happen. So with merger and acquisition, at least two groups are coming together with different styles and culture. It can be challenging, especially with the uncertainty of future and job security. So what happens is stress happens. So change is difficult, So for example, where I work, we just got a new principal. So anything that was in place last year, it's out the window. So there's a lot of stress going on right now in my workplace. I think some days are better than others, but he's still trying to get his infrastructure in, and he's trying to let people understand how he does things. So it can be difficult, especially when employees are not directly involved with decisions that impact their job. There's also communication. Communication, when stress happens, communication is critical. So as an HR department, you want to share information about what is happening and how it's going to affect the employees. Fear of job loss. With the two cultures coming together, there is bound to be conflict. Employees may not have the same previous opportunities. So, for example, here's a perfect example. At my job, there are people that were in line to get certain, I guess in business it would be like promotions. And then when basically the old guy left and the new guy came in, he was just like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. We're not doing that. So if they were, you know what I mean? So if they were in line to get something extra, or I don't know, an extra service or something like that, and the new boss that comes in, he doesn't know anybody. So he's trying. So they've got to start all over from scratch, showing him how worthy they are to get whatever that extra thing is that they're looking for. The fear may impact productivity and cause employees to seek other employment. And even in my job now, there are people that are saying, "Oh, I'm not hanging around for this. I'm out of here. With the first smoking train, I'm done." And that's fine. I mean, everybody has the option to do what they feel is best. But these are the kind of things that happen. So HR should recognize this and provide opportunities for employees to get to know each other, openly address concerns, and work together to create a new culture. Competitiveness also happens. Employees become competitive because of potential job loss. Results could be conflict, even violence. Yes. So right now at my job, just in my office, for the people in my office to get to know the new guy, it's almost like everybody is trying to do something extra to show him who they are, when it may not take that, because he's paying attention anyway. But everybody's trying to outdo everybody else every day. I mean, right down to how you dress, the projects that you're over, what you have your hands in, what you don't. So competitiveness, and it says that it could even become violent. We haven't gotten to the violent part yet, but I could see how it could easily become that way, because people are snippy. People have attitudes and so on and so forth. So HR should be alert to negative competition and ensure that employees are informed about impacts on their jobs and their futures with the organizations. So what do you do to survive reorganization and merger and acquisition? Well, the source that I used, which is from it was an internet source that had information specifically on employee morale and reorganization. And I'll give you guys this information. They gave a few ways that you can survive reorganization, merger and acquisition. The first thing that you want to do is recognize change, especially if you are an employee. You want to recognize change and the need for change. And if you recognize it and you understand that there's a need for it, then it's almost like the 12-step process. You got to admit it. what you have to kind of admit what's happening is something that needs to happen, and that is typically the beginning. Another thing is you want to get involved. So employees should get involved with the merger team. This maintains your professional profile and provides networking opportunities. You want to also look after yourself. You want to take charge of your own profile and future. Do not rely on anyone else to advocate for you. Even though employees will go to the HR department to try to seek guidance, if you're a good HR manager, then you should be telling these employees these are the kinds of things that you can do to improve your standing. You want to make sure that you're visible. Make it clear to the change team that your presence is essential to the future success of the organization. Always be available and always be visible. Now, at my job right now with my team, I have said it a couple of times. This is an opportunity. They see it as, oh my gosh, she's changing everything. This is an opportunity. He doesn't know us from a can of paint. And guess what? We can do whatever we want because he doesn't know any better. And we can do things that we typically had never thought about doing before. Because A, he won't know, and then if it works out, then he's gonna be like, oh, I can't get rid of not one of them because they are doing exactly what I need to move this organization forward. You also want to be prepared for the worst. This is kind of on the flip side. Don't be complacent. Complacency definitely is the enemy. So you want to plan your next step and be proactive and make sure that, you know, even though you're trying to do things to improve the organization, that you're realistic. Refresh your resume and identify what your key skills are. And if you need to plan a new career, don't be afraid to step out there and do it. Okay, so let's talk about the causes of low employee morale. Well, I'm sure that we have all dealt with low employee morale at each one of our workplaces. One thing that causes low morale is reorganization, which we just talked about. Also, changing goals. If you are in HR and you are constantly changing employee goals, that can exhaust employees. You know, they are trying to do a good job for you, and as soon as they get to where they feel like they're doing a good job, you say, yeah, that's not what we're doing anymore. You assign tasks that you give them tasks that are not attainable. So as a good HR person, you want to make sure that you're giving your employees tasks that are attainable, and you give them clear guidelines on how to accomplish those tasks. Misunderstood expectations. Confusion wastes time and energy. My previous boss, I wasted a lot of time and a lot of energy because I would be working on a project and I would get right to the end and I would go and try to keep him in the loop, and he would say, oh, what are you doing that for? Mainly because he forgot, but because he was so old. But you want to make your job expectations clear, and you want to arrange for proper training and proper procedures and deadlines. No open communication. A workplace with no line of communication with management is dangerous because they start to create, employees will start to make up their own scenario on what they think might be going on, whether it is or not. So they may have insight into the workplace, into workplace improvement. So you have to keep a direct line with your employees. They might know ways that you can improve the organization, but if you are not communicating with them, then you can't take that information into consideration. Employees should be able to voice their concerns to management without repercussions. Set up guidelines for private discussions is another thing you want to do. And finally, wasted potential. As HR managers, you don't want to waste, if you're wasting potential of one of your employees, that can cause low morale. Don't have me shuffling papers when I'm much better at programming. I mean, I feel like I'm just here to get a check, and there's no value in what I do. So people are hired for jobs they are overqualified for, or their skill set and job interests do not match. So this causes frustration, of course. So find more appropriate positions for your employees that will save the employee and company frustration, and also potential financial loss. So what do you do to address low morale? Well, communication is key. So the source that I used, they gave an 8-step process for addressing low morale. I'm going to go through them very quickly. It's 8 quick steps. The first thing you want to do as an HR manager is you want to schedule a small group discussion of about 5 to 7 employees, maybe 90 minutes each. You want to explain your purpose, which is to how to address their low morale, and you want to make sure that you avoid a gripe session, because we all know, somebody gets the ear of the supervisor and everybody wants to tell everything that everybody else is not doing right. Step 2, you want to ask them questions that signal responses about the poor morale, so you can find out what the source is. You want to review. During this time, you want to make sure you're taking notes. So you want to review your notes and find what the patterns are, and identify 2 to 3 primary issues to discuss with the departments and department managers and supervisors. Step 4, you want to schedule conferences with department managers and supervisors to try to tell them what you found out, and to give them, allow them to give some input. When you're doing this, you need to make sure that you're not identifying the employees that gave you that information. Step 5, you want to create an action plan for each department. Step 6, you want to provide copies of the action plan to the supervisors and management, and make sure you're also providing it to upper management so that they can be part of the follow-up discussion, and so that they're also in the loop about what's going on. And then 7, you want to reconvene your discussion groups to talk about progress, because you're going to send your supervisors and managers out to actually implement what you came up with, and you want to make sure that step 7, that you're reconvening and you're talking to employees to kind of hold the managers accountable for the information that they're giving. And then step 8, you want to collect and summarize your notes in a report form, so you can, here again, make sure that management is kept in the loop. Upper management is kept in the loop. All right, so there are little things that you can do as an HR specialist to improve morale. You want to give positive feedback, absolutely do that. Touch on employee strengths. Do so in private, so coworkers won't label employees as teachers' pets. This was funny to me because my new principal, I hate to say it, but it is what it is, he gets me, whereas my previous boss did not get me. And so he values my opinion, so he asks my opinion frequently. And so my coworkers that are in my office, they see that, and oh my, you can imagine some of the things that they say to me with regards to the time when he comes and asks me stuff, or calls me over to his office, or comes over to my office. And I don't think that he is disregarding them per se, but he doesn't see, he wants to see somebody else stepping up, and I don't think he sees that. So you can imagine the names that I'm called. So another thing you can do to some little things, you want to lessen the stress of the workers. Provide some amenities for them. One thing in my job that I'm not sure who actually thought of this, but somebody in my building bought a Keurig machine, like a coffee machine. Yeah.
K-cups.
Yes. And they just put it in the teacher's lounge, and every, I don't know, month, somebody just comes in and drops a variety of those cups in the teacher's lounge, so anybody can go in there and pick out what they want and make a cup of coffee, apple cider, whatever they want. And that's kind of cool for, the employees.
Do you have the little filter that you can put the grinds into?
Yes, they have the whole nine. It's really cool. You just put your cup under there, push the button. It is expensive, and I don't know who does it, but it's a nice gesture. Another thing that's suggested is you can play music. I don't. Your workplace may not allow for that, but music might be something that's a nice gesture. Another thing you can do is make some changes. Squash the rumors. Whenever you hear anything negative about changes, explain, what changes are, what's upcoming. And then talking to employees is also very important. You want to engage employees on a personal level and offer encouraging words whenever possible. The last part is morale activities that you could, as an HR person, do for your employees. And so one is one they talk about, I'm going to give you a brief overview, is a penny wars, where you, for a worthy cause, you just collect pennies and have people drop pennies in a bucket. The reason it's called a war is because you divide the office into two teams, and you try to see who can get the most pennies. But the other team can actually drop quarters, nickels, or dimes in the other person's bucket. But when they do that, they have to subtract that number of pennies from what's in their bucket. So what you have are the two groups trying to strategize to figure out how they can increase their money and then bring the other team down at the same time. But it's all for a worthy cause, because in the end, you're going to take all the money and give to a worthy cause. The second one is playing hooky. What if you just came in one day and said, okay, everybody between 9 and 11, I'm taking everybody out for pizza. So everybody just shut the office down. Let's just go out and let's just do something nice. And the third one is weekly heroes. What if you had your employees just contribute by just saying, hey, why don't you say something, nominate somebody as a weekly hero, and just write down something that they did that you think is worthy of them being a hero for a week. So that's my last slide, but before I go, what I wanted you guys to do is to take a card and then write on your card, Matt, I stole your pen, sorry. Write on the card somebody in our class that you think would be worthy of being a weekly hero if we were an organization.
Oh, okay.
And just write one thing about them and say why. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to say that, as an HR person, you might have people do that, and the way that you get people to nominate people is that when you turn in your nomination, you also give the people that nominated, give them something nice. So I'm going to give you all a little medal that will hopefully boost your morale.
Yay. Good job.
Thank you. Matt, how much time was that? Hi, Dr. Greer.
24 minutes and 10 seconds.
No, for real? Sorry. There you go. Thank you.
We're done?
I am.
I have passed out to you a handout. Okay. And I will be covering substance abuse and injuries in the workplace. These are two important issues that could affect us all. Why? Because we need to be able to protect ourselves from injuries and identify harmful effects of substance abuse in the workplace. Enforce requirements of our organization's policies, recognize signs of substance abuse, and we also need to know how and when to take effective steps to assist employees when they are injured or in need of help with substance abuse problems. Let me define what substance abuse means. It is using a substance to modify or control mood or state of mind in a manner that is illegal or harmful to oneself or others. Potential consequences of abuse include accidents or injuries, blackouts, legal problems, poor job performance, family problems. Emotional effects of substance abuse, aggression, burnout, anxiety, depression, denial. Impact of substance abuse at work, employee health, productivity, safety, employee morale, security. Now what do you all think addiction looks like? This is a question I'm just throwing out. What does addiction look like?
I got a couple of names I can throw out.
Well, let me define that for you. The irresistible compulsion to use alcohol, drugs, caffeine, shop. There's several of them. These all can be addictions. But when drugs and alcohol are in the play, they can have adverse consequences, and it can affect everyone, family, friends, your coworkers. It is characterized by repeated failures to control use, increased tolerance, and increased disruption in the family. Anyone can be a substance abuser, rich, poor, black, white. It doesn't have any type of, it's not prejudice. And it affects people emotionally, behaviorally, and physically. Currently, according to the World Drug Report, it states that of those who inject are dependent and face serious social and health consequences, the production of opiates has declined, but heroin and cocaine market is growing. Problem along with the misuse of prescription drugs. These are just some of the current scenarios that's going on. 3.6 million opiate users in the U.S. and 27.5 million marijuana users. That's a lot of marijuana users. Now, what it didn't state was that if it was medical marijuana or just regular drug users. My question to you, do you think that TV or the music industry has contributed to the growing problem?
Absolutely.
I think so. But back in the day, you had hippies and you had the other, Woodstock and things of that nature. And there was those kind of things going on too. But one of the things that came to my attention while I was doing this board, they are doing things to drugs that are making them kind of exciting to people. My 4-year-old found, and I'll have another picture up here for you in a minute, but on my board I have here, there's one of a transformer. And one of the things that really caught his attention, look, Mom, there's a transformer. This was my 4-year-old. So they're making these drugs appealing to people. Currently, according to the world, substance abuse costs the economy more than $50 billion. This figure includes cost of tobacco, alcohol, and illegal drugs. 76% of people with drug and alcohol problems are employed in the U.S. Absenteeism comes into effect when drugs or alcohol play a part with people with working. Alcoholism is estimated to cost 500 million lost workdays annually in the U.S. Healthcare costs for employees with alcohol problems are twice as high. Almost half of all trauma and injury visits to the hospital, ER, are alcohol related, 3.5 times more likely to be involved in a workplace accident, which makes an increased amount of workers' compensation and disability claims. Take a little time to read what you have in front of you, and I have it's on page 1. Under the government relations is the Drug-Free Workplace Act of 1988. And actually, some of us have already went over this because you had them in your HR issues. I think Dwayne had this as one of his. So it talks about the Workplace Act of 1988. To comply with the Drug-Free Workplace Act, companies and organizations have drug-free workplace policies that exist to protect the health and safety of all employees, customers, and the public. Safeguard employer assets from theft and destruction, protect trade asset secrets, and maintain product quality and company reputation. This is the reason why they have these policies in place, okay? They comply with the Drug-Free Workplace Act of 1988 and any other applicable laws that there are, which there are some other laws that can come into place. Policy. A statement banning manufacturing, distribution, dispensing, possession, or use of any controlled substance. This might be what your policy at your job reads. Information program. This must educate employees about the dangers of drug abuse in the workplace. Action on convictions. Employees must be prepared to take action when anyone is convicted of a workplace drug-related crime. And usually your policy will have something about some kind of disciplinary act or something that goes on. Like sometimes when these policies are in fact in place with the employers, they don't actually fire the employee. They will give them time to go to treatment centers and things of that nature. But at the same time, these abusers are hazards at the workplace. So there's ample amount of time to help them to get on their feet, to get them back together, but at the same time, they're a hazard to other people. And, you know, they might be doing, you know, drugs, or you might be a driver, a bus driver. You can't give that amount of time because you don't want them, you know, killing someone. So your work policy might read like, here at Company X, we prohibit the possession, use, or sale of drugs or alcohol on company premises. Forbid working under the influence, provide assistance for employees who won't help for any abuse, impose discipline on those who refuse help. Something that my employer has is EAP, which is Employee Assistance. It's an Employee Assistance Program, and this program is, you can call them, you can email them, and it's not only with drug abuse, substance abuse, if you're having financial trouble, if you're thinking about suicide, and it's a confidential line that you can, you know, get online or call them, 1-800 number, and they don't tell your employer. This is something it's confidential between you and EAP.
And it's free.
And it's free. It is a free service. If you're having problems with law problems, you know, I think programs like this are great, but what if companies have these types of programs at your job and people don't take advantage of them? Then you have people that, you know, that are abusers, I should say that. Let's say that they're not getting the help and they're still using the drugs. My next question is, do you know if your job has a drug or an alcohol workplace policy? They do? Okay. Don't raise your hand. Do you actually know what the policy reads?
No.
No? Okay. We sometimes have office parties at Applebee's, our job. And I have had employees as we go over there, we're all lollygagging, having a good time, and they might grab a beer. But this is during work hours. And then we go back to work. So actually, they drink on the job.
I don't even know why we're paying y'all.
Right. So, as you think about it, you're not supposed to drink on the job or have any type of alcoholic beverages on the job, but you got this kind of stuff going on at the job. I talked with a church member of mine. She's a JDAC counselor, and she talked about an assessment study that was conducted in 12 organizations. Listen to this. More than 50% were aware of workers coming to work intoxicated to work. Of all accidents at work, 20 to 25% involves intoxicated workers. Now,
Some people can't work unless they're intoxicated.
Unless they are intoxicated. When I asked the counselor at JDAC, she told me a majority say that they don't have a problem. And if they are obsessive drinkers, they only do it on the weekends.
That's a lot.
And they only take the drugs on the weekends. Right. And they're able to afford the drugs, so they don't have a problem. 50% of the people said that their organizations do not have sufficient programs to deal with substance abuse issues, and employees don't know, and she also mentioned that employees sometimes don't know where to go for help. So, how many of you all know someone that has come to work intoxicated? Oh wow, this is half the room.
Wow.
I had a counselor who came to school every single day.
Every single day.
And she functioned very well.
Okay, is there a solution to help with this problem? Yes, you play a role. You play a key role in this. Be prepared to act. Never ignore the problem. Talk to the employee privately. Alert the employee about programs that you have within and outside the organization so that they can get help, and warn possible discipline. You know, if you're gonna drink or smoke or not smoke, well, smoke drugs or inject yourself or whatever you're doing, warn them about the discipline. Monitor performance and behavior of the employee. Employee privacy is very important. Now, just because you've warned this person, don't make it a public situation. Talk to them privately, and especially if it's affecting you on your job, your part of your job. Because I know in my position, we do a lot of passing of the paper, and what I mean by that is, after this person gets done with this report, it comes to me. And if this person has been drinking and I see, you know, all kinds of numbers all over the place that doesn't make sense, that's going to make my job a lot more harder. Call in your manager or another supervisor quietly. Remove the employee if they have become real irate. Recommend a medical evaluation. If the employee refuses medical evaluation, document the incident. At the college I was teaching at not too long ago, I had a student. Now, he normally comes in and he's, hey, Miss Fields, yada, yada, yada. Well, I didn't get that at that point in time. He came in and he was just kind of down, set, and he didn't seem to be doing anything. Well, he comes back from break and he starts talking off the wall. He starts touching other students. It was downright horrible. And I said, you know, I had to make a sidebar. I said, come up here, let's go out here, what's going on with you? Then I smelled alcohol, and I smelled marijuana. I said, what went on? Well, I had a little party to myself on break. What? Oh, wow.
He admitted it?
Yes, he admitted it. Yes. I said, well, you know, we can't have that in the classroom. And it got so bad till he started a fight outside. After I had told him he had to leave, he started a fight outside of the hallway with another student, and it was really bad. Does anyone know the most popular drugs?
Molly. Marijuana.
I have a couple of pictures of some of the drugs and what they look like on my poster board. The most popular drugs are marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and speed, uppers, prescription drugs. And why people use these drugs: experimentation, social and recreational, and a stress reliever. Do any of you know some of the street names? I heard somebody say one of them, of the most popular drugs.
Molly.
Molly would be one of them. These are some of the street drugs. I'm sorry. What was the other one?
I don't know. Ask Dwayne, I guess.
I don't know.
Ask Dwayne. Okay. Well, I don't know what's being said in the background, but there are what some of the drugs look like are LSD. If you can look at the corner, it has it's like a tattoo that you put on you.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's why you shouldn't put on
It's like a tattoo, like you bought from a bubble gum.
And that's the drug?
And that's the drug, and it's yes.
I didn't have a clue.
Another popular one. What? And there have been several news reports that said that people were running and could not stop. And they would take off all their clothes. I don't know how they are injecting it. I think it's inhaled by sniff. I don't know which one of them it is.
Bath salts you sniff. But it's not like bath salts you found in the store.
No.
It's special bath salts.
It's special bath salt.
It's the consistency of Coke.
Yeah, but it's a lot. I mean,
It's man-made. It's a man-made drug. So
you can run for days.
yes. Spice is another popular drug. I don't have a picture of. Yes, I do. It's called K-Spice. This comes from a plant that probably you might have in your yard. And you wouldn't even know it. You wouldn't even. And I know someone who actually, this person is, of age. They went to the Highlands in Bardstown Road, and they went to one of those smoke shops,
Right.
and thought it was cool to get some spice. Well, spice landed them in the ER. Yeah. K12 is another form of a bath salt that looks and smells like strawberry, Nestle Quick. Sometimes comes in the form of something that looks like Pop Rocks. And I'm telling you this because you all are educators. So you deal with students. And when you see this kind of stuff in baggies and things of that nature, be ready to take action quickly. In your packet, on page 3, titled Drugs and Behavior Checklist, I have listed common drugs along with some possible symptoms of how certain types of drugs could cause a problem or a person to act differently. Abuse of alcohol and other drugs affects people emotionally, behaviorally, and physically. Users have different reactions, okay? And the abilities to handle or hide this, some of people can do it very well. They can hide what they have going on, just like you all said. You all knew someone who came to work and they were drunk, high, or whatever. But if you're noticing people with mood swings, frequent absence from work, physical changes in weight loss, excessive or increased absenteeism and being tardy, these might be signs. But also you have to know your coworkers, because these also can be signs of a person who's not feeling well or they're having some type of sickness. So also be very well. But if you do see this kind of thing, make sure you document this information. Keep a record. Recognize patterns of behavior, and that will increase early intervention. Okay? Substance abuse checklist. Raise your hand to fight drug abuse. Yeah. Raise your hand to fight drug abuse. Are you familiar with your workplace policy? Yes or no? Shake
Yes.
partial. Do you understand the requirements of Drug-Free Workplace Act?
Yes.
Okay. Would you consult an employee about the policy if you knew a person who was in trouble?
Yes.
I know, it's iffy. It's iffy. I'm the same way. I feel the same way, because sometimes you don't want to interfere, but at the same time you want to help. But then at the same time, you kind of can turn your back on it since it's not affecting you. But at the same time, it is, because you're working with them and you don't know. As you said, pop this Molly or whatever, and they go off and hit you in the head or something. You don't want none of that. Right. So that's what I'm talking about.
And you don't want to make assumptions, because it could be prescription related. Like, even though we got prescription abuse, they may, it could be something else you don't want to assume.
It could be menopause. You're right. You're right. Okay, what I presented today is important, okay? And drug abuse and alcohol abuse is serious. It's a serious situation. And I have listed some key points to remember in your packet. I have given you information about substance abuse and help numbers. If you know of someone or anyone that is in help or needs trouble, please take the time out, give them this packet. They don't have to know, or lay it on their desk. Yes.
In help or needs trouble?
In help or
In trouble.
In trouble or needs help. Thank you.
Sorry,
You helped me out.
giggling. I just wanted to
Thank
get that
you.
out.
I appreciate that. Sometimes I need to iron it out, and that's good. Thank you. But anyway, at the same time, if you know somebody that's in trouble, please give them this packet, lay it on their desk, or do something that can try kind of help them. Hopefully, you know, you'll be able to help them.
Some good information. You're done.
Okay?
I mean, Tanya.
Thank you.
But Tanya, is this your second one?
Mm-hmm.
Can you send it to us?
Yes, I will send it to you.
Send it all to us?
I will.
Keep going.
Because this,
Matt, no. It's your turn.
That's why he's saying.
Yeah, I know.
No, it's not that. That was.
What happened here?
see what I'm talking about? Wow.
What's going on here?
Gracious.
All right, I'll send it to you.
Unsafe
Please,
behavior.
both of them, I need both.
That was a good job.
And Rhonda, can we suggest that we send each other,
But whatever, yeah.
I like to hear about something. Papers.
Oh, Dwayne, you gonna be there? You rock. Excellent. Yeah, hold on.
She done got tired.
Matt, how much time do you need?
Go.
Good evening. Today I'm going to be presenting employee absenteeism and privacy in the workplace. So let's start looking at some causes of absenteeism. Illness, death in the family, bullying and harassment, child care and elder care. And this is one with, again, as we've discussed previously, with that aging population, it becomes more and more of a factor. And then child care as well, with now more and more families having both the mother and the father having to work as well. Disengagement. People get disinterested in their job. They don't have that passion. And it's so much easier to call in or not show up if you don't care about what you're doing. Job hunting. You know, sometimes if you're in a supervisor and someone randomly just doesn't show up or comes up with an excuse you don't quite buy, you're in the back of your mind, you're thinking, are they really interviewing today? That actually happened just the other day in our position. One of our coworkers didn't show up, and we were like, are they on an interview, or maybe they're sick? Other personal reasons as well. In a survey of 14 major occupations in the U.S., 77% of workers who had chronic health conditions accounted for about $84 billion worth of productivity. This is a major issue. Health, but also the people that are dismissing, not necessarily because of health. But one thing I did kind of notice is you can kind of look at this. You see at the top, the professional, managers, service workers, but down at the bottom we have our farmers, our foresters, our fishers, our constructioners, insulation. You know, a lot of the things that people are doing, the physical activities, they're not the ones that are missing work. And you know, this is a total aside from what I'm presenting on, but you know, you read more and more about people leading the sedentary lifestyle and how it leads to such poor health. The people that are active and on their feet and doing things, they're the ones that aren't missing work. So there may be a correlation. That would maybe be not in the scope of my research, but maybe warrant some future research. So let's take a look at involuntary versus voluntary absenteeism. Involuntary absences are illness, death, other kind of health-related issues, whereas voluntary absences are those avoidable absences. Those ones, again, where they're disinterested. There's things going on maybe within the management. You know, a lot of times it can be not good management that leads to that absenteeism. Again, work-related issues. Other people feel like, you know, I get 5 sick days a year. I'm going to use them if I'm not sick or not. Or I have 10 vacation days. I'm going to use my vacation days no matter what. So those are other things that, again, with the voluntary absences. So let's look at some ways that we can look to control absenteeism. There's the disciplinary approach. After an employee gets to so many absences, they might receive an oral warning. Then it's a written warning. they may lead further to suspension and ultimately a dismissal if that person is a chronic absenteeism person. The positive approach. This uses positive reinforcement. So as opposed to those negative things where you're suspending and disciplining, you're rewarding those other people who are meeting attendance standards. There may also be a buyback. Let's say at the end of the year, you know, if you haven't used all of your sick days, we may give you some employee bonuses in terms of compensation. Here at Spalding, we actually will turn 2 sick days into personal days every year. And that's something every year that I've been here, I've used that. I think, you know, I'm kind of outside the norm. I've taken 2 sick days in 6.5 years. But for other people, they're running out of sick days, you know, halfway through the year. So again, that's a positive approach. The combination approach, use rewards for desired behaviors, punish undesired behaviors. It's kind of a carrot and a stick approach. Carrot to reward those people, a stick to kind of maybe have a little punishment for those people that are chronic absenteers. And then there's also a no-fault policy. This is one where you're given an allotment of days and you take them at your own discretion. The reasons for your absence doesn't matter. If you just don't feel like coming that day, don't come that day. Employees manage their own attendance. However, once you reach that maximum days and you start to go over, you may have discipline taken. The one thing that, you know, the book said the advantage of this is it kind of takes the monitoring a little bit out of the HR employees' hands, in the sense that, you know, they're not documenting every instance of absence and seeing, you know, was this an involuntary day, voluntary day. So that's something to take into account. And then there's what we call the paid time off programs, PTO programs. So you get a combination of vacation, holidays, sick leave, all together kind of in one pot. Again, you're able to have that discretion in how you use those days. And then, you know, if you go past that, you still have the ability, you know, if you come down with an illness, but you're not getting paid for that time. And what this tends to do is it tends to decrease those one-day absences. So that typical day where, you know, someone just calls in for 1 day sick. But it may increase that overall time because someone may get to the end of the year and have 10 days left that they have to take. Again, you know, as I talked about not taking any absences, I also a lot of times don't take all my vacation at once. So now the last week of school, before we get a 2-week off break, I'm taking 5 days off. And I have so much accumulated vacation time. I'm really excited. Once we leave for Thanksgiving break, I have 8 days to work until like January 6th. Oh, wow. So if you see me after Thanksgiving, I'm really, really excited and happy. That's because of that. So we don't really have a PTO program, but that's just a side, and I'm already happy about that. So now, I know a lot of you all work in the school system. So what kind of policy do you all have in terms of vacation and whatnot? Does anyone care to share?
Well, depending on your hours and your levels, administration, they work different days and have different requirements. But as a teacher, you have, you know, your 180, well, I'm 195 day contract. But, you know, we get 10 sick days, 3 personal days, and 2 emergency days that do not turn to anything.
Now, what about the vacation days? Now, that's something where during the school year,
there's no vacation.
There's no vacation days.
Right.
So how do you plan around that when, you know, things come up in your life that you would maybe need those days? Is that an issue that you all find?
Well, you plan strategically, but as you know, teachers usually do all of their travel or whatever in the summer because you have that time off.
Right.
It's a little different for Pam and I, because I don't know how many days you are.
215.
I'm 215 too, yeah. So ours is a little different. There are times that teachers get days off that we don't.
Right.
And I mean, she's right. Even with that, we do try to plan strategically. But I don't take days off. Do you? I have like Huh?
Very seldom.
Very seldom take days off. If I take a day off, it's a major situation. The only time, matter of fact, the one time I've taken off in the last 5 years is because of this class.
Oh, wow.
Literally, so.
And
I think
if you take days off as a
more work.
counselor at JCPS, it's more work when you go back.
It
So
is.
There's no point of
It is,
taking
no
off.
point.
Definitely.
Tanya, what
With
about-
me, we 26 paychecks. I get a day every paycheck. I mean, it's 8 hours, and it rolls over. And it does. I mean, I can roll it over for years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then
Ours
you
rolls
can-
over too. So I have over 100 sick days right now.
So you have 100 sick days, and then you just, at the end, you kind of will be able to almost retire early?
Yeah,
Cash
you
goes
can
in.
buy days, you can buy time back for if you decide to retire. But I'm planning on, that's not what I'm doing.
Okay.
I'm taking every one days.
All right. So, so now we're going to switch gears and kind of talk a little bit about privacy in the workplace. The ACLU receives more workplace rights violations than any other issue that they face. Employers can read your email, look at personal computer files, eavesdrop on your phone calls. Employees can film you with hidden cameras, not only in public areas, but locker rooms and even restrooms.
Wow.
And this is ACLU, and I will email you all of these because these are all hyperlinked, so you can get on the ACLU's website here and read that. So let's talk a little bit about social media, because that's something that is a new issue. And I've got my friend, I think David, is going to discuss privacy.
Hello, my name is David Scher, and I'm an attorney with the Employment Law Group. Today I'd like to talk about data privacy and data security, especially in the employment context. Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, said that the amount of data being put out by human beings in the world every 2 days is the same amount of data that has been put out in human history, going back to the beginning of recorded history all the way into the year 2003. In other words, every 2 days, the amount of data that's coming out into the world is the same as thousands of years of data in prior history before there was advanced computing technologies. And that really has changed the world. On Facebook, there are 2.5 billion posts per day. There are about 3,000 tweets happening on Twitter every second. During the presidential debate, there were 105,000 tweets per second. Really extraordinary amount of information that is coming out there. Not to mention the innumerable social websites and the ability of websites like Spokio and other related websites to find out just about anything on anyone, even on Google Earth, looking at, for example, somebody's house. What does this all mean in the employment context? It's very important for employers to carefully understand what information is coming in and what information they need to know about. We recommend that an employer have a very clear yet reasonable social media policy. It's simply a reality that employers are going to use Facebook and other social media at work. They may do so on their private phones, for example. So a social media policy should advise employees that information that they obtain while using company computers is company information and could be surveyed or used in any context, including an investigation, so that employers are on notice that if they're using the computer for personal reasons of any kind, that information could actually be obtained, even if it's so fleeting as a text. Furthermore, we recommend that employers conduct thorough background searches to include social media, perhaps even hiring a third-party investigator to understand what is out there, what the employee is doing, so that the employer can be educated before they hire an employee and make an educated decision based on legitimate legal reasons for hiring or not hiring the employee. Now, if you're an employee, what should you do? First of all, generally you shouldn't be posting about your employer on social media. Now, it is lawful to engage in what is called concerted activity. That means it is lawful to post on social media gripes or concerns about an employer if you think you're gathering or organizing a response, like a union type of response. And it may even be lawful to disclose illegal conduct that your employer is engaging in if you are doing so for the purposes of trying to notify management and correct the problem. But even though it may be legitimate, it's still really not the best idea. It certainly doesn't engender good relationships with your employer, and it really isn't the best way to disclose illegal conduct to your employer. The better course of action is not to gossip about or talk about your employer in social media, but instead to prepare clear written instructions and written information directly to your employer, to your manager, to the Human Resources Department, and to the Compliance Department, This will provide you the best protection against retaliation and will ensure that your disclosure can be protected under the law. If you have questions about this, the Employment Law Group can handle these types of issues and does so all the time. You can reach us at www.
So like I said, David was able to say that a little bit better than me. So if you're looking for a little bit more in-depth privacy overview, privacyrights.org was one that our text recommended. And this is a website with just a plethora of information in terms of background checks, working, debt collection, harassment, stalking, junk mail, faxes, online privacy technology. So I encourage you all to kind of look at that at your discretion. Another one, privacy, business, and law. Again, we all can't bring our own David into our lives, but pandab.org has a very searchable privacy and business and law interface that you can use. So that would be another one that I would recommend to look at as well. So look at some things that employers must do. The Data Protection Act, employees must keep personal records up to date, but only the needed details. So again, there are certain ways that you are protected. The American with Disabilities Act says that all medical related information maintained must be separate from other files. So they can't keep that in your personal file. The best practice that the book recommends is to keep medical files, have a historical file on you as things start to date themselves, a current file with current pertinent information in that confidential file. So you have 4 different files on an employer, and then you want to keep those for about 3 years. So what kind of speech do you actually have? Employee freedom of speech is not unrestricted in the workplace. If you have controversial views, if the employer follows due process, they can actually remove you from the position for airing those controversial views. So again, you know, as David talked about, it's having that policy that establishes guidelines, and that's one thing throughout all of the privacy and even absenteeism. It comes down to policy and educating your members on the policy. Whistleblowers. This is something else, that there's actually no comprehensive law that covers a whistleblower. As much as that's in the media and you hear about that, however, most civil service systems have rules protecting them. So again, it's knowing your rights. In fact, in the stimulus funding of 2009, the government tried to attach individuals that were taking private businesses that were taking stimulus funds had to sign on to the whistleblower agreements. And there is kind of a right to speak out of the employee versus what types of confidentiality the employee has. And there are right and wrong ways to do that. And that's what the Sarbanes-Oxley measure kind of protects, is an attempt to kind of remedy these breaches. You have to complain to certain entities, you know, your superiors, going through federal and state organizations. Again, it's not just posting that up on a Facebook post. That's not the way to go about whistleblowing. And again, you know, providing that documentation, putting those things in writing, again, maybe not out in a social media sphere, but more this route. So again, as we kind of conclude up, with both absenteeism and privacy issues, it's important that employees have the plan. The policies need to be communicated, and we also must be prepared to adapt to new technologies. And then I do want to kind of highlight this handout that I got. I thought this was really beneficial. I mean, and it's very simple to read through, but can your boss read your email? Yes. Can my boss listen to my phone calls while at work? If they're work related, yes. Can my boss read my text messages sent on my work phone? Yes. Wow. Even personal text messages. Can my boss monitor me by video in the workplace? Yes. Can I be fired for something I write on a social media site?
Yes.
Potentially. There's monitoring technologies. There's some that even are putting wiggle motioners in desks.
Oh, wow. What is that?
Wiggle monitors measure how much you move around at your desk and how engaged you are on your job. They're also asking employees to wear badges that monitor how often they get up from their desks, the tone of the conversations, how people socialize during the day. Are there ways to kind of avoid being monitored? Again, your employer can look at your personal messages on your phone. The other thing too is my iPhone right there, it's now connected to Spalding's wireless. If I were sending explicit text messages or getting on explicit websites, if Spalding was monitoring that, I could be held responsible. So not saying that any of you are going to do that, but to protect yourself, sometimes it may be better to send messages that you may think of private nature through your own wireless plan. That's the only way that you know that you're going to be safe.
Exactly.
So again, this was really interesting. I mean, you could talk about privacy issues and just technology for months on, or for 20, 30, 40 minutes. I could give a 2-hour presentation on that. Any questions?
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Greer.